items. First being the review of the agenda for tonight's city council meeting. So I'll skip to number 5, which is under old or unfinished business for annexation, and that's ordinance 2020 TAC 36 to change the corporate limits of the city of North Augusta by accepting the petition requesting annexation by the city of North Augusta and annexing plus or minus 0.23 acres of parcel 005, TAC 10, TAC 05, TAC 016, fronting on Mayfield Drive and owned by the city of North Augusta. Ordinance final reading. I believe this is our final shot. This is for the addition of land, public use land from the northern terminus of the Greenway to connect to Mayfield Drive. We've talked through this a number of times and showed some diagrams, but this will be the final reading tonight for this particular item. And with that, I'll go ahead and pause if there are any questions from the council, if they want to throw anything on the table. Having heard nothing, I'll move to item 6 under law and justice, which is new business. The 2021 jury box motion to accept. I'll turn this over to our city attorney, Kelly Zier, to kind of talk through this. But my understanding is this is a annual requirement we do to verify our jury pool for municipal juries. So Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, this is a list that we get each year. It's basically provided by voter registration and the highway department. Years ago, we just had jurors from voter registration. That was changed about 4 or 5 years ago. Added anyone with a driver's license who did not register to vote. I checked today, and these now come in on a disc. Years ago, we used to get sheets that we had to cut, put in a box and whatever. Now they come on a disc. We have 21,209 names on this disc, which means with every jury, you potentially could use 18 jurors, 6 struck by each side and 6 served. So you got a 1 in 1,178 possibility to get on a jury. And beyond that, right now in the state of South Carolina municipal court, we cannot hold jury trials. The Chief Justice has provided we cannot hold jury trials now until we get further approval from the court. But when that time comes, we'll be ready with this list approved.
Thanks, Kelly. Mr. Mayor and Council, any questions for Kelly on this item for the agenda? Nothing heard. I'll move to item number 7, which is ordinance number 2021 TAC 01, an ordinance amending sections 6.3 Code of Ordinances in the city of North Augusta related to the requirement of licensed contractors to provide a surety bond to the city as a condition of being issued a license to do business in the city. This ordinance, deleting such section in its entirety, ordinance is first reading. So this is something that we put in study session in our last update. And this is something that Cammie Hayes and our finance department had recommended doing along with the rest of our staff, just to clean up business practices. I know there was some rigorous debate on this in the last study session, but we wanted to at least get it out here on the table. And this is something we'd like to have read tonight, although if the council wants to table, they can. But I would recommend we move forward with this if possible. So I'll go ahead and pause. I know we're still in study session, so if there's any questions between myself or Cammie or any other staff for the council members, happy to answer your questions at this time.
Mr. Jim, this is Bob Brooks.
Yes, sir.
This ordinance is removing, it's my understanding, we are removing the entire, or deleting in entirety what it has to do with the bonding.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just by way of comment, and I think Tom's on here. I asked Tom this week to check because there seemed to be maybe a little question about exactly what kind of bonds we were doing away with. And as we told you last week, these bonds really provided no protection for the property owner, but were more along the lines of bonds for contractors doing work in the city. I guess an example I'd give, busting a culvert or something of that nature. They all came back to the city. Tom did some research and determined that the contractors, in order to get their state licenses, have to provide certain bonds, and they're more bonds that would protect the property owner, the person that they're dealing with, than what we had to begin with. And the final thing I tell you, I looked through a number of ordinances for various cities and did not see anything along the line of what we had. About the closest I saw, and this is something we may look at, was for requiring a bond if a contractor was going to be doing work on city property, like in the streets or the sidewalks and different areas. I have seen a couple of cities that, in order to get an encroachment permit to do that type of work on city property, that they require some sort of bond, much like what we had were requiring for all of the contractors. So I think we're not really giving up much of anything, and we still have other ways to collect for the things that the bonds would have provided for. And I don't recall us ever collecting on one of these bonds. And that's been a long time.
I guess my concern last week was maybe I asked the question wrong. I was just trying to point out the fact that, if you're conducting a business that's required a state license, then you have to go through that bonding process to get that state license. What I was questioning or concerning was, if you're conducting business that's not required by one of those categories of a state license, are there any other steps that we as a city are doing to help protect the consumers as far as when they get their city business license? That's what I was trying to get at.
And I don't know I could really respond to that. I'm trying to think, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think this basically dealt with contractors getting city business license, I believe. And so if they already get that LLR or whatever it is license, then they apparently already have some sort of bond that would protect the property owner.
I think what David is talking about is, it's not necessarily the licensed trades, such as myself, or plumbers, heating and air, contractors. It's the ones that don't have a state license. And I think that's what David was getting at. Your tree cutting services, how do you weed those out? I mean, it's really on the person who is doing business to, check, and, they should verify with any company that's not doesn't require a state license, to check with that company to make sure. I mean, they could always ask them, hey, if you're going to take these 10 pine trees out of my yard, I would require you to have a bond. And then of course a bond's done through your insurance company. It's not but it's really, I've been on both sides of the fence with this, but at the end of the day, the consumers need to do their due diligence. There's nothing we can do as a city, to stop any of this with Facebook advertisements and things of that nature. We don't have the personnel to track down every person who's working illegally. So I would just say, if anybody is watching, do your due diligence, contact the Better Business Bureaus, your Chamber of Commerce's, your building departments, check to see if this is a reputable company. Most of your reputable companies are going to keep these things. And I think that's really, at the end of the day, I think, David, that's what you were saying, but I just don't see as a city how we can prevent those non-licensed entities from, that aren't regulated by the LLR, from doing that stuff. And
I look back to make sure, and I am correct, that this section that we're doing away with only required, excuse me, required this bond of licensed contractors. So the group that you're talking about, it had no impact on, and that may be for another day to look at something to deal with.
Okay, Kelly, when I read the ordinance, I'm just curious, and I didn't check it, I should have. Is section 6.3 the last section in that grouping? If we delete it, you'll just put deleted? Is that what you'll do? Kelly?
I tell you, you were breaking up. I didn't.
So Kelly, I think the mayor was asking if the section 6.3 was the last section, and if so, would we just put deleted in that portion of the ordinance? Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Well, if it wasn't the last section, would we put deleted? Otherwise, there's no, deleting it doesn't potentially cause problems when you go from 6.1, 6.2 to 6.4.
Generally, what would be done under this, I think it would just show that it was deleted, and that section would be available for adding to it. And it was not the last one, because there is 6.4 under there. I mean, we could do it either way. I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference, because you'll notice throughout the code, a lot of times there'll be sections that are reserved, that it might be a 6.3, 6.4 that are reserved, and then there's 6.5. I can't tell you why, but that's just allows it to be done that way. And I guess that's something that we can deal with Sharon. Sends these into the Municipal Code Corporation. They will help us determine the better way to deal with it.
Okay. And then Roman numeral 2, where it says all other ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are to the extent of such conflict hereby repealed. And that's standard language that you include, and
that's very standard language. It's a catch-all to make sure that there's not something else in the ordinance somewhere that refers back to this section that we maybe didn't pick up. It just basically covers it all. This goes away, and anything else in the code that referred back to this, that portion would be deleted.
okay. I mean, I knew what that was. It just, in this instance, just kind of struck me as a potential problem, but we've been doing it for the entire time I've been paying attention. So, I'm not questioning it that it should be here. You've just put my mind at ease.
I'm understanding what you're looking at. Actually, the wording is done to avoid a potential problem in the future with something we missed.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Jim?
Could I ask a question? Like when I had my house painted and the guy went down, because I told him he had to be licensed by the city of North Augusta, which he did, but then he had to go through license in Columbia. Now, so explain now, are we doing away with the bond? Like he could have come in and painted my house without having the bond now, or I'm a little confused.
He would still have to get a business license from the city.
Okay.
He just does not have to give a bond in order to get it. And again, the bond that we had before was not help you if he didn't do a good job painting your house.
Okay.
The only thing that would help us is if he violated another city code.
Right.
A fine or something.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And again, Councilwoman, this is to get us more in line with the other municipalities, here in the region, South Carolina and Georgia as well, just to make it cleaner. We're one of only a few municipalities that have this surety bond requirement. And we just kind of looked at it from a staff perspective of, what are we really getting here? We're making it harder to do business in the city, and we're not really providing any additional protections to the consumer. And so then the question is, why are we doing it? And so that's really the root of what we're trying to get to for this particular section.
Good, thank you.
Subject to any questions on this item? The next item we have is item number 8 under community promotion, resolution number 2021 TAC 01, naming the Carsville neighborhood as an African American Heritage District. I'll turn this over to the mayor for his comments.
Thank you, Jim. Can you hear me, Kelly, or am I still breaking up? Okay. The committee that we put together some time ago to look at Calhoun Park and what we wanted to do there, as part of their recommendations, and I admit it was at my initiation, was to designate Carville as and I thought at that time, an African American historic district, but a little bit further investigation showed that that's identifying it as a historic district is pretty much a special category of historic areas, and it's designated by the state archives and history group. So I think the heritage actually will fit just as well. The society building is being looked at as a possibility for artifacts and things like that for the area. I spoke some time ago with Dr. Pope at First Providence and encouraged him to put together a group to take action and get whatever they wanted done in that area. And so that's underway, and they're pursuing the historic district designation separately. And I just think that that area is very, very special, particularly in the African American community. And that was made clear to us when we had one of the committee meetings at First Providence Church, how they look at that area and the memorial headstone there as being very, very special and important to them. And I think this goes a long way toward recognizing the heritage that African American communities had in North Augusta. If some of you remember and attended the talk at the chamber held the breakfast when Mr. Brighthart, or Reverend Dr. Brighthart, spoke, that was, the attendance there was better than it's ever been in any other meeting I've ever been to. And clearly, I think the majority of the people there were African American, and they wanted to hear about it. And so I just think there's a lot of interest in the city to have this happen and to recognize the accomplishments, such as the founding of the county. I think it was in 1871 or something during Reconstruction. So that's the background on it. Any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Mayor, I don't have a question specifically about this. I think it's a phenomenal idea. Something's long overdue, and I commend you for pushing this forward. I think it's a absolutely positive thing for the community. Not to open up a can of worms, but on a unrelated or a related but different topic. I know the last time we had a discussion about other recommendations from the committee, we discussed obviously the monument. I'm not trying to open up a new conversation on that, but we referred that I think we were going to get some feedback back from the state on ownership of that. And I was just wondering if there's been any progress on that, but I will absolutely just looking for info on that. Thanks.
I'll defer to Kelly.
Yeah, the correspondence on that went to the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate, I guess is what it is. And that's been 45 days ago at least. And actually, we didn't anticipate there would be any kind of response till after the legislature got back in session this year. We are hoping to receive a response, and but at this point, we've got nothing back relative to the letters that we sent, asking just that question, whether or not the legislature claimed any ownership of it. And if I had not provided a copy of that letter to all of council, I'll be glad to get it to you all so you can be looking at it. And as soon as I get any kind of response or acknowledgement related to it, I'll let you know.
Thank you, Kelly.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification. Has the city contacted the Department of Archives and History regarding this?
We have not contacted them. The Heritage District is not, I don't believe, and if it is, I apologize for not knowing, state designated. The Historic District designation comes from the state, and Wayne O'Brien has been in contact with them and is working on the package to get it designated as an historic district.
No problem. I just want some clarification on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
question is, I support this, have no problem with this, and I fully expect this to pass tonight. What happens after this? I mean, is it going to be signed? Is it, I didn't know if there were plans or if it's just going to be in name and only.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I guess it's been a couple of months ago, I had a conversation with Dr. Pope and said, you know, if you wanted something done there, that you need to get a group together to do it. For me to try and do it, I didn't think was going to be the right sensitivity to the issue. They've met a number of times. David has been in actually almost all the meetings, I think. They have a plan. They've drawn up plans for murals and things of that nature. He's also made an application to the Accommodations Tax Committee for funding to get started. They've had discussions with the owners of the Society building to see if, and I think they've agreed that it can be used for a museum or a center of information center or something like that. So I think I've got the right people working on it right now from the citizen side. And, you know, if he's successful with accommodations tax money, that'll be the seed money, I think, to get it. First Providence has a, 401c3 foundation. And Dr. Pope has contacted those people to see if how to go about getting another one. And they said, if you've got one already in the area with essentially the same focus, you don't need another one. So I think the right steps are underway so that charitable donations can be made. They've got a plan and they're continuing to refine it on how to present the area. I originally had a sentence in here asking, or it would have directed the city administrator to get signage done. But Kelly, of course, asked your question is where you're going to get the money. And I didn't have a good answer. And so I think I deferred that question at this time. And I'm encouraging the group that's formed to continue to work, and let's just hope that they can, with this background and impetus, can continue the path they're on. David, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I sure will. I'm part of that committee Dr. Pope's put together. Exactly what you're referring to, Fletcher, is what the certain individuals on that committee are working towards, to creating some designation. So, you know, this is probably the first thing that committee is looking for, a commitment from the city to support their efforts in creating this historic district or heritage area. And this, I think, is probably just the first step in it. And then then we'll be coming back. The committee will be coming back to ask for funding support in different areas as they move forward in their applications and goals to what they want to ultimately have together. There's some very good ideas as far as welcome center type situation, historic building and like a museum to a certain extent, but to to create a historic designation and area and being able to tell the story of Carsville and Hamburg and all the history that we have not really identified as a city related to the African American community. So I think that's part of the goal. And yes, Fletcher, signage and those type of things are all on the scope of what the committee's working towards. And like I said, they wanted to make sure they had the commitment of the city to support their efforts and to move forward with it. Later on, block grant monies or something like that to help beautify the area and things like that. So it's some pretty grandiose plans. I can ask him if he wants any of y'all to participate or view a meeting or anything. And I'm sure he probably would welcome anybody to come and listen in. So we'll see.
Now, my question, I don't want to see us get in a mess like we did up on top of the hill with historical districts. But now, with the property like Ye Old Grocery, plus there's a little house right there as you turn into Carswell off Buna, are those people going to be part of this historic Carswell district? And if so, have they been contacted?
I can tell you, Ms. Pat, from what I understand, Mr. Pope is working on that. Dr. Pope is working on the boundaries, and that's part of what the committee is working on. How far do they want to have it stretch? And right now, I don't believe the focus is it to be a historic district necessarily to have historic protections or guidance or guidelines as far as structures and so forth. I don't think that's the goal right this moment. But I understand exactly what you're coming from, Pat. And part of my participation is that we don't put ourselves in that type of position later. I want us to make sure we have a positive impact to the area and not restrict ourselves as a city or the historic community committee.
Right, because on top of the hill, 12 years ago, that all looked nice. But right now it's rough. But like I said, I just be sure every area is included and people are notified and things like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. I appreciate it. Jim?
All right, sir, and on to the final item I have, which is item 9, economic development, which is resolution number 2021 TAC 02, which is a resolution to reallocate funding for the facade improvement program. And so if you look in your study materials under attachment 9, what it basically lays out for you is that this past summer, because of COVID and guidance received from mayor and council, that we reallocated $25,694 from the facade improvement program to a small business grant program. And call roughly $6,000 is actually executed in the small business grant program. And then we have $19,518 left in that program. And we'd like to move that back to its original funding source, which is the facade improvement program. And that is the resolution that we have for the council tonight to consider. Subject to your questions.
Think that's a good move. Let's move forward.
Okay, subject to any other questions, I'll go ahead and close out our item 1, which is the city council agenda. And we'll move to item 2 under finance, which is the capital project sales tax 1 council discussion. We'll talk a little bit about a potential bridge project. And so what you received from me, both to your personal and city accounts, this afternoon was an update from Tom Zeser. And also in that email was a picture of a potential bridge. And so I'll start with a discussion, but I'll turn over also to Tom to talk through a little bit about what we would potentially propose. And understand what I'm really asking for tonight from the council is approval to proceed with further planning for this potential option. So I'll start with the fact that we still have funds that are still outstanding in capital project sales tax one, roughly $112,000 that's still sitting out there that can only be used for a set series of purposes. And so as we at the staff war gamed, where we could apply that those funds, one of the potential options we looked at was under greenway improvements for the extension. And so there's still some discussion about what does extension exactly mean. But ultimately, what we've determined is that there is a bridge that's closer to the rear of the public safety headquarters over by Dog Bark Park and the Butterfly Meadow. And so in that area, you've got a completely wooden structure. And that wooden structure on the greenway is getting fairly dilapidated. And so Tom Zeser came up with a good concept to put in a more permanent structure over there with the same width as the current bridge, but have more of an aesthetic and design and structural integrity of more along the lines of the Martintown Road kind of bridge, just less grandiose. And so we've taken a look at that. We think that's a potential winner, and that would probably eat up, based on current cost estimates, about half of the $112,000 for that project. And after we got through our kind of RFQ and whatnot, we have a better sense of what that would actually go for. But let's call that roughly $60,000 today, and that the residual money left over we could use towards Summerfield Park, which is also in CPST 1, and use that for a number of things. I know Councilwoman Carpenter had talked about swings, and I think we also are looking at some potential fixes to the splash pad there in Summerfield Park. But what I wanted to get from the council today really was just to put this in front of you specifically for the bridge project to see if this is amenable to you for us to continue research on and get cost data and do further coordination here within the city before we go further down from a time investment perspective. And I see Tom is online. And Tom, if there's anything you'd like to add to the mix, please do so.
Yeah, I guess the main thing is I just need to clarify the cost estimate information. The $65,000, that's for the bridge structure itself. That includes no foundation work, no engineering design, no construction. So that's just the cost for the bridge structure to procure that.
So I guess the undercoating is extra. So let's, I undersold that for $60K. Tom, what was the total bill on that bridge from your perspective?
I mean, I really think, I'm afraid we'd be bumping right up against the total remaining in this project when it's all said and done. Again, we're looking at 65 for the bridge. We have engineering costs for foundation design that's going to run potentially up to around $15,000 based on a previous proposal we had received. And then again, that only leaves about $27,000 for actual construction to construct those foundations as well as to set the bridge in place. And then again, we would need to do some localized stream stabilization under the bridge itself, since it will be inaccessible once the bridge is in place.
Tom, can you talk a little bit about the design of the bridge itself, and the metal involved, and what kind of O&M are we looking at long term with that bridge device having to keep wooden bridge in place?
Yeah, what was proposed for this? Well, the existing bridge was constructed in about 1998 as part of the Riverside Boulevard improvements. So that gives you an idea, and it's at the end of its functional life right now. The proposed bridge is a prefabricated steel structure constructed with what's called weathering steel. It's unpainted. It will develop a nice rust color to it, but that will require virtually no maintenance throughout its lifetime, which I would expect to be, the only thing that, maybe 50 years out, the deck might have to be replaced if it is inspected regularly. So virtually very little O&M over the lifetime of the proposed bridge. We could certainly look at some less expensive options for it. I'm not sure what that would be right now, but we could potentially shorten the structure. The reason the length that's proposed is to make sure that we are clear of any regulatory wetland that's associated with the stream itself. Trying to avoid as much Corps of Engineer permitting and things that go along with that.
So also of note, I see Rick's online, Rachel Moody, myself, Tom, and Rick from PRT also kind of walk this project. So PRT is supportive, thinks this is a good option for us as far as from a Greenway perspective. Rick, if you're online, if you wanted to weigh in on that, I'd be curious to get your perspective as well for the council.
Thank you, Jim. I absolutely support this just from a maintenance perspective and something that will be attractive looking. You're going to have a brand new public safety facility right across the road from this bridge. We don't want to leave that existing wooden bridge up there. And long term, this will be something more like in terms of the Martintown Road Bridge. So certainly support this project from PRT.
What's the decking on the bridge? Is it the lightweight concrete?
Yeah, that's what's proposed with this bridge is a concrete deck. There are options. You can install a wood deck or a composite lumber type deck, but they will require replacement for a period of time.
If you're going to go the whole, you may as well do the concrete because it's lasted well on the Greenway Bridge. I support this.
If I can ask a question, I haven't had a chance to pull up capital project sales tax 1 list. Did not bring it with me to my office, and I couldn't quickly put my hands on it through the website. Obviously, if we go this route, we're foregoing potential other projects. I do commend staff. Jim, I know you and I share the same opinion that we've got these funds that have had money in them for a long time. We need to give the taxpayers some benefit for it. So I commend staff for trying to close these out and do a project of value. I just curious what other items are on that sales tax one that we could potentially categories that we could potentially spend the money on. I think that would be important for council to know as well.
Councilman, I can certainly send you a copy of, the entire council a copy, but I'll just read it to you verbatim here, what I've got in front of me, because I figured this would come up. So CPST 1 was for roughly 7.5 million total, and it was for $150,000 for the expansion of the recycling center, $760,000 for Riverview Park improvements, $130,000 for completion of Summerfield Park, $80,000 for development of Walnut Lane Park, $1.6 billion for the reconstruction of various city streets, $850,000 for resurfacing city streets, $1.1 million for improvements to city drainage systems, $752,905 for construction of sidewalks, $1.5 million for development of the Greenway extension, and then $600,000 for the development of the downtown. So those are the different project bins, if you will, the CPST one. I'll send you again the copy of that. So y'all have that just to kind of peruse. I think it's our biggest challenge is the fact that when you're talking about $112,000, which sounds like a lot on the face of it, when you start applying it against some of the other major fund lines or projects here, it runs out pretty quickly. And we don't have an ability to continue to pull from CPST 1 because that fund is closed. So we want to make sure that whatever project that we embark upon, we can complete with the existing fund and not have that languish into a different fund line and have to fund it out of the general fund or some other way.
I guess my thing is, I know which bridge y'all are talking about, and I think it would look great, especially with the new public safety's headquarters. But you know, Tom, if you're saying just the bridge itself is 65,000, then you got to get, you know, the foundation work, engineering, it's going to eat that 112,000 up. The only way I could support it would be if we know that everything's going to come in at that total or less, because right now, I mean, we've got other pressing needs. You know, and I know you have to allocate this money for certain things. I mean, I like the idea, but I just don't think right now, you know, unless it can all be done lock, stock, and barrel for 112, I just, you know, and Tom, you would know, or Fletcher, David, you know, y'all are into that heavy kind of construction. I mean, if the bridge itself is 65, you know, engineer's going to, you know, get 15 grand. That leaves us basically 30,000 to try to get the foundation work done. I just don't see it. And then we're having to pull. And right now, I mean, I love the idea. I'm supportive of the idea. But right now, to me, we've got other pressing issues, in my opinion.
So, Councilman, I take your point. I think that, again, what we're asking for today is just the approval to continue to staff this and to find out if, you know, what our exact costs are going to be. If we start running this to ground and we figure out this is going to cost, you know, all kinds of hidden fees, and we start bumping into 120, 130K, I think that kills the project, quite frankly, because I agree. We're being very fiscally responsible right now. We don't have a lot of slack in the line to pull money out of other funds to backstop this. And so I would really want to feel that we're in a position where we could fund the entire project and hopefully with a little bit left over for Summerfield Park under 112K. And if that's not viable, then I don't believe that's a project I can bring to the council to vote on.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, I would say do your due diligence and let's see. You know, I know Tom had mentioned a minute ago when he's on the line, we could look at a, you know, less expensive route. So, you know, I say let's do that. I mean, if we can get a decent looking bridge that's going to require a little maintenance, I'm all for it, but I don't want to dip into other funds that are remaining to try to finish this thing up.
Thank you, Councilman. And I see we're at about 14 minutes left before our council meeting, and I know I've got a presentation I really would like to get through with Dominion Energy with Scott Neely. And so I would just ask, you know, I guess barring any other comments, are there any objections from the council for the staff to continue this kind of this effort to find out what the cost is going to be, and that if we have a viable project to bring it back to you for approval? I cannot start obligating funds on this project until I have council approval anyway. So you are the fail-safe, if you will. So we're not going to run down and obligate money for the city that you have not approved.
The only comment, Jim, that I would make is when staff is doing that, I'd like for staff to look at, are there projects that are also on sales tax 4 that have similar uses that we may want to look at spending this money on, or intended purposes based on prior conversations that this body has had. I just think we might want to consider looking at if we've got a pressing infrastructure drainage need or something of that nature on sales tax 4. I'm happy to elaborate later.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks, sir.
I just wanted to look at it from the opposite perspective. Is we've got capital project sales tax 1 money that's, you know, been sitting there for years and years, and if there's a project that's covered under 2, 3, or 4, and we run over a little bit, that we use that money to take care of this, because I think it's a valuable project, and that's desperately needed. So I'll shut up, and I see Scott went to his camera. So Scott, it sounds like about your time.
Yes, sir. So barring, again, just to make sure I have, if not unanimous, but at least mostly consensual approval for us to continue staffing this project for the bridge. We'll continue to press on this. If there's anything that eludes you at this point in time, you want to get with me afterwards, I'll be happy to take your input. But what I'm hearing from the council is we'll continue to press on seeing kind of exactly what the costs look like, and then to Councilman Dickert's point, where we could potentially pool that money into other CPSD 3 and 4 projects to help round those out if required. With that, we've got about 12 minutes. I'd like Scott Neely, Ms. Rachel Moody's going to, I think, drive slides for the LED lighting. Scott came to us back in, I think, late November to talk about Dominion Power initiative to put LED lighting in to replace the older lighting. And I could certainly talk that's all blue in the face, but I think Scott's a better spokesman for that. So I really just wanted to give you an opportunity as a council to kind of get an understanding of what Dominion was proposing and whether or not the council is either largely for or against us moving forward with at least looking at some phased options to go forward on this project. So Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Jim. And it's good to see everyone. I hope everyone had a great holiday season. And Jim asked me to go over this proposal. As he said, we've shown this to Rachel, Jim, and to Tom a couple months ago. And we've also been meeting with other municipalities about this. So this is something that we are proposing really across our service territory for any municipalities where we have electric service territory. So if you could advance the slide, Rachel. So what we're talking about here is changing out your existing HID lighting. HID stands for high intensity discharge. And that's your traditional high pressure sodium, metal halide, mercury vapor, and changing those out to LED. And most of you are familiar with LED. You have them in your homes, but the difference is the HID is a bulb type technology that typically has a ballast. And the LED is totally different. It uses, it's a chip on board, discrete. If you look at this image here, you can see the bulb that represents the older HID technology. You can see the modern LED fixture, which has about 20 discrete LEDs and little acrylic lenses that cover each one to direct the light where you want it to go. So if you could advance the slide. So one of the great benefits of a LED is at night, when you're talking about street lighting, it's less shadows. So this light over on the left side, as you're looking at this picture, that's the older HID technology. And the picture on the right is your modern LED lighting. You can see there are still some shadows over on the right-hand side, but almost all of the shadows have been eliminated in that shot. If you could advance to the next one, Rachel. So this shows putting light where you want it. So on the left, you have the traditional HID lighting. You can see that a lot of the lighting is a little bit more splotchy. It's not really lighting up some of the areas at all, and a lot of it's going into that park-like area. On the right, you can see that the LED light, it's more uniform, and it's really being put primarily in that roadway or that and the walking trail along the side. If you could advance to the next one. So also LED lighting is better at night as far as color. The high pressure sodium lighting on the left, you can see it's a lot darker and it's harder to tell the real true color of that car. Whereas LED lighting is more like daylight. So you can clearly see the shade of red that car is. And, some people have even commented that this might help law enforcement at night to be able to see vehicles more clearly and also to see into vehicles. If you look, the vehicle on the left, really can't see into that vehicle very well, but you can see into the one on the right better. If you could go to the next slide. So what we're doing here is we've had a perceived need that's been communicated to us by many municipalities across our service territory that they want LED lighting. And so the question becomes, well, why haven't municipalities went in that direction? We do have LED lighting on offer now. The problem is the LED lighting is more expensive than traditional HID lighting. So what we've come up with is a way to sort of jumpstart this process is to offer some incentives, and we'll go through how that would impact the city of North Augusta here on a future slide, if you could advance. So let's talk about what fixtures are eligible. This is not for all of the street lighting that you all have with Dominion Energy. This is for what we call Rate 17 municipal street lighting. This would be for overhead lights that are, most of them are going to be on wooden poles, and they're going to be fed from our overhead system. So the wires that are actually on poles overhead. And you can see the picture there on the left. That's a Cobra head. So that you have, just a huge number of those in the city. But it would also apply to what we call underground fed roadway lights. So that picture in the middle, you can see it's fed from underground wiring, but it's still a Cobra head type fixture on top. So that one would also fall into this program. The light on the right, which the city of North Augusta has a lot of decorative lighting in your downtown area, also in subdivisions. For this program that I'm speaking of tonight, that type of lighting, that decorative type of pole and decorative fixture, that's not included in this program. If you could advance. So what we're offering to you is a 10-year contract, and they would have, within that structure would be a 5-year incentive. So we would replace your existing HID lighting that falls within the parameters of what I just explained about the types of lighting. We would put in new LED lighting. You'd sign the 10-year contract, and we would give you that 5-year monthly incentive to lower your cost, so that the goal is to get you down below what you're actually paying right now for HID for that 5-year period of time. So you would actually, and we'll show you that savings in a moment. You can see there it says incentives may be lowered on future contracts. What that means basically is that we're offering this incentive for a time, and we may offer similar incentives like this in the future. They may not be to the level of what this is. This is the first brush, and a lot of times incentives tend to be higher at the beginning to get the program started, and then might trail off in the end. The assumption is, a lot of people ask, what happens after the 5 years? We're signing a 10-year contract. So our assumption is, based on the history that we've seen the last few years, the cost of HID lighting is increasing. It's becoming harder to get the fixtures, and they're becoming more expensive. Whereas LED lighting, the fixtures have been coming down in price, and I would say holding steady or decreasing. We expect them to decrease into the future. We expect the HID to increase. So if you stay with HID lighting, we believe after 5 years that the LED prices will actually be cheaper at that point. So what we're going to do is give you an incentive to go ahead and get you on LED now. You'll actually save money in the next 5 years. And then when you go back on the net normal LED rate, we expect it to be lower than what HID rates would be at that time. If you could advance to the next slide, Rachel. So what this is really the crux of the entire proposal. This gets down into the actual cost for the city. What this chart shows is how many lights you have, the types of lights that exist, what you're currently paying, and then what you would be paying if you go into this contract and you are able to benefit from the incentive. So right now you have about 1,300 lights that fall within this category. Your current bill for those lights is almost $15,400 a month. So if we switch those out to LEDs, comparable LEDs, then the incentive that you would get would be $4,297. That incentive would be taken off of the cost for the LEDs, which you can see is higher than what you're paying now. That's the $18,400 figure. So the net amount that you would be paying would be $14,185, which is lower than what you're paying now for your HID fixtures. You would save a little over, not quite $1,200 a month. That's about 7.7% savings over what you're paying now. If you could advance to the next slide. And I'm watching the time. I know we're getting short. And Jim, just sort of stop me if we get to that point. A couple of advantages for LED. Obviously, we talked about the uniformity of the lighting. The color is better. I want to make sure you understand there's no upfront charges for this. We do this capital outlay and put these new fixtures in. You're going to be saving money versus your current monthly cost. And you also have the ability to add new lights if you want to add larger lights in some areas or more lights in some areas. You can do that at this point and actually take advantage of that incentive on those. One important thing I'll mention, these lights will have what's called a communicating node, and those lights will actually call us and tell us when they're giving trouble, when they, go out entirely or when they're having some sort of electronic issue, instead of the city having to, have this back and forth communication with us constantly about street lights being out. And I know that's a hassle for the city to have to do that. So if you could advance. Just to make sure you understand what the fixtures look like, the fixture at the top is a high pressure sodium Cobra head. You have many of those in the city at present. And the fixture at the bottom would be the replacement fixture, which is an LED fixture, of course. And the roadway pattern for the LED is shown, and you can see that it correlates more with the roadway instead of being a round pattern that would shine into people's driveways, front yards or business parking lots. The light is more in the road where you want it. If you could advance. And then you have a lot of the other lights are these smaller HPS 15,000 lumen. Those lights were really designed for backyard use. They're really security lights, but there are a lot of those on the roadways in town. And we will not be using that little light at the bottom the bottom left. The light that would replace the HPS light is this LED 8600 lumen. And that gives a much better roadway profile where the light is shining. You can see the other two lights shine in a circle. And that's why people use them in their backyards. It lights up your whole backyard. The lights that we're proposing have a better roadway profile. Advance, please, to the next slide. So right now we're getting contracts from municipalities. We're expecting to fully deploy this basically right now going into the January, February. If you all decide that you want to move forward with this, we've already provided a draft contract to Jim. And it could take several months for us to actually have people on the ground in North Augusta if you decide to move forward. It would probably take about 45 days to actually do this work. There's so many lights in North Augusta. But if it takes us 6 months or 9 months to get to you, you'll still have the full benefit of that 5-year incentive from whenever the lights are installed. And that's really, I know we're out of time, so that's really all I had.
Scott, thank you. I know we're tight on time, but if there are any council members that have thoughts on this, they can get in touch with me directly, or we can put together a time with Scott if you have specific questions that would like to have answered. But I really just wanted to show this to you as the council, and that we've had some discussions with Dominion Energy. I wanted to show you the proposal that they talked about. I know this is also getting pitched at the city of Aiken and also within some other municipalities and within the county. But I wanted you all to take a look at it. I know lighting has certainly been a topic of discussion with at least a few of the council members about how we're going to improve that over time. And I thought this was a good faith effort with Dominion Energy that might be worthwhile for the city to examine. So I'll go ahead and pause on that. And since we're at 7:01, I'll turn it back over to the mayor for the city council meeting. Thanks for your time and attention on the study session.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Okay. We ready to go? Ricky's everything up and running, stayed the same? Okay. I want to call this meeting of the North Augusta City Council to order. I'd ask you to stand for the invocation and the pledge. Dear God, the new year is before us. I imagine most of us welcomed it in with restraint. But nevertheless, we are full of hope, and we certainly pray for a return to more normal circumstances as soon as possible in this year. We do, however, recognize that the virus is surging throughout this community, with increasing numbers of people being ill and hospitalized. We ask that you be with the families and the healthcare workers in these trying times. Please comfort those in need and strengthen those serving. For the city, opportunity lies before us to continue service, outstanding service to the residents and visitors to North Augusta. Our employees are key to providing this quality service. Please keep them from harm's way and also from illness. And in this time of challenge, we ask that you provide us wisdom. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me see. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Looks like everyone's here. Wait a minute. Oh, there you are, Pat. Sorry, I couldn't find you. Council, you were provided the study session and council meeting minutes of our meeting on December 21st. Unless there are additions or corrections, they'll stand approved as provided. Okay, thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. Item number 5, annexation. It's ordinance number 2020-36 to change the corporate limits of the city of North Augusta by accepting the petition requesting annexation by the city of North Augusta and annexing plus or minus 0.23 acres of parcel 005-10-05-016 fronting on Mayfield Drive and owned by the city of North Augusta. Do I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on final reading?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Toole, Ms. Carpenter, seconds. Second. I think we pretty much know this is well, I'll let you talk about it, Jim.
I'm sorry, I got confused there for a second, sir. Are we, annexation?
Yes, item number 5.
Thank you. So for annexation, sir, this is to connect the northern terminus of the Greenway and have that zone as public use all the way up to Mayfield Drive. It's a pretty short addition there from the terminus, which is the neighborhood, to get up to Mayfield. This will be good for our biking community specifically that are interested in biking that route. This is our final reading on this particular option, and I would recommend its approval, as does the rest of the staff.
Thank you. Ms. Lamar, based on our conversation earlier today, there are no comments from citizens on any item on tonight's agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I had no citizen comments issued.
Thank you. Council, any comments?
The only comment I have is, do we have a timeline on when we would actually do this extension?
Councilman, I have an answer for you presently on the construction portion of that, if you will. Like, how do we actually put the road in there? I can get that to you in a follow-on session, but obviously the first part of this has to be the annexation of that land before we can proceed. But I'll have that as a due out if you'd like.
Is that something the developer's doing on this one, or parting in, or partnering in, or anything like that?
Rick, do you have any feedback on that? Is that something we're working with Frog, or is that through the city?
Can I comment?
I can respond. No, this isn't, we don't have assistance from a developer. We have a TAP grant that's going to help us pay, I almost said prepare, this portion of the Greenway extension. I believe that's probably what Tom was going to chime in and say.
Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any comments from council? Hearing none, being a virtual meeting, I will call the roll. Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Dickert,
Yes.
Mr. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Presnell,
Yes.
Mr. Poole.
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. It passes unanimously, 7-0. Moving on to item number 6. This is the 2021 jury box. Do I have the chair moves to accept the jury box. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Presnell. Kelly, you want to give a brief overview of what this is about, please?
Basically, we are required each year to approve a new list of jurors to serve in the municipal court. The current state requirements is that every citizen in North Augusta that is either registered to vote or has a driver's license is to be included on this list. We get the list from the state voter registration, who also has access to records with the highway department. They provide this for us each year. We get a disc, and the disc that we have received from them that basically is certified by them to contain the names as required. And this year there are 21,209 names on that list.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from council? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Brooks,
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Dickert,
Yes.
Mr. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Presnell,
Yes.
Mr. Toole.
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. It passes unanimously. It is accepted. Moving on to item number 7. This is ordinance number 2021-01. An ordinance amending section 6.3 Code of Ordinances for the city of North Augusta related to the requirement of licensed contractors to provide a surety bond to the city as a condition of being issued a license to do business in the city. This ordinance deletes such section in its entirety. Do I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on first reading?
Moved.
I got the second was the first Fletcher.
I was. Brooks.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Brooks. Kelly, there may be people that have tuned in that weren't in the study session here. Could you give a quick overview of this for us?
Yeah, this is an ordinance that been on the books forever that basically says that a licensed contractor, if he comes to the city to get a business license, must also provide a bond. On reviewing this, we determined that the bond that was required is not any kind of bond related to work that he's doing for a citizen. It's totally a bond that was intended to protect the city for damage that the contractor might do to city property. I think the example I gave was running over a culvert and busting that where it would have to be redone, or maybe other things. And in addition to that, we determined that we apparently were very much in the minority of any communities with this type of requirement. And as I said at the study session, I do not recall us ever acting upon this type of a bond with the requirement and intent to try to get business license ordinances throughout the state very much uniform. And in fact, I saw today whereby I think it's January of 22 that we're required to pass certain uniform requirements as to business license. The determination was made that this was not something that was really beneficial to the city, helping us, and maybe was one of those things, although as I say, we haven't called the bond, that was causing contractors who are intending to do business in the city to believe that we were a very much more difficult place to do business with, and made a determination that it would be best that we just do away with this requirement entirely. And that's what this ordinance does. It just deletes it completely from our code.
Okay, thank you. Having no comments from citizens, any comments from council?
Mr.
Well,
Mayor, go ahead, Pat.
I'm sorry. The bottom line is that we're just making ourselves a little more friendlier in doing business with the business world. And I think that's great. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to reiterate what I said in the study session for any of the, people that may be watching. This thing, you still need to, if you're going to hire someone, do your due diligence, check with the Better Business Bureau, your Chamber of Commerce's, or even your building department, because this is not something that, a lot of people hear that word bonded, and if somebody's not bonded, they kind of freak out. I don't think they understand what it is, but definitely make sure that they are licensed, do your homework. That's basically all I wanted to say on that, because I don't think us as a city could do enough to catch all of these Facebook, plumbers, tree guys, whatever. So just make sure if you're going into a contract with somebody, make sure they are a legit business.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Dicker?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Presnell?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. This ordinance passes on first reading unanimously by a vote of 7-0. Moving on to item number 8. This is resolution number 2021-01, naming the Carsville neighborhood as an African American historic district. And I think someone suggested that I read it, and I'll read it in its entirety. It's not very lengthy. Whereas the now abandoned city of Hamburg was the location of an incident having implications for national and state elections of 1876, and whereas 8 men were killed in a confrontation between the African American militia and a large group of whites, and whereas 7 of the 8 men who were killed were African Americans residing in Hamburg, and whereas Savannah River floods in 1929 essentially destroyed and washed away the buildings and residences in Hamburg, forcing residents to relocate, a large percentage of whom chose the Carsville area uphill from Hamburg. And whereas the remnants of the First Providence Baptist Church building founded in Hamburg in 1860 were relocated to Carsville following the 1929 floods. And at approximately the same time, the Society building was constructed in Carsville, where both buildings remain standing today. And whereas members of the committee appointed by Resolution 2019-10, a resolution providing findings about the Hamburg incident of 1876, and appointing members of a committee to evaluate options for an additional display in John C. Calhoun Park, concluded the First Providence Baptist Church and Society building are suited to be the nucleus of what could become an African American historic district. Whereas the South Carolina Department of Archives and History is the agency authorized to designate such an area, as an historic district. And whereas the committee members also concluded Carsville is a location within the city of North Augusta appropriate to emphasize African American accomplishments, especially those during and after Reconstruction. And whereas Hamburg and Carsville are linked by proximity, events, and history, Carsville is the logical choice to tell the story of Hamburg from its founding through its destruction and of the growth of Carsville and African American accomplishments. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and city council of the city of North Augusta, South Carolina, in meeting duly assembled and by the authority thereof, the area along Barton Road east of Buena Vista Avenue shall be designated as the Hamburg-Carsville African American Historic District. The chair moves to adopt this resolution. Do I have a second?
A second.
Mr. McGee. Thank you. Having no comments from the citizens, are there comments from council?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify something to those that were listening in. I believe you may have misspoke. It's the Hamburg-Carsville African American Heritage District, not Historic District.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. You're correct.
I just want to say I'm glad that we are at a point where the city can make this level of commitment and towards this designation for this area and his history that it is related to. I'm just excited about what the committee that Dr. Pope heads is going to be able to put together so we can further this designation in this heritage district.
Thank you. Any others? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Dicker?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Presnell?
Yes.
Mr. Toole?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. The resolution is approved unanimously. That concludes the formal portion of the agenda tonight. Are there any administrative reports?
Now, we're not doing item 9.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry, I think we've still got under economic development, number 9.
I put my notes on the wrong item. Thank you. Ms. Carpenter, I need to go back and pay better attention. Item number 9 is under economic development. It's resolution number 2021-02, a resolution to allocate funding for the facade improvement program. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Dickert, Mr. Toole. This resolution returns $19,518 that was available for the small business grant program back to the facade improvement program. We originally started with $25,692 for the small business grant program, which was implemented as a result of impacts from the COVID virus. This resolution simply returns that fund back to its original source, the facade improvement program. Any comments from council? Call for the vote. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Dickert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Presnell?
Yes.
Mr. Toole?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. The resolution is adopted unanimously. Okay, thank you, Ms. Carter, for correcting me. I think I've finished everything now. We're at the point in the agenda for administrative reports.
Sir, I've got 2 items that I think might be of note for the council and our citizens. We've added these to our Facebook page, but these are late breaking updates for road closures. and road work. So one is we're going to have a Dominion Energy as part of their long-term project to do tree trimming. They've got a project that's going to be going on in the 100 block of Alta Vista tomorrow from 7:30 in the morning to 12 p.m. And that will be between Pershing and Crystal Lake roads. So that'll be going on tomorrow morning. And then a probably broader concern is that we're going to have some traffic light work done at the traffic signals at the intersection of Georgia Avenue and Martintown Road on the 6th and the 7th of this month, so Wednesday and Thursday respectively. And so that will probably have some impacts on traffic as we go forward on that. But we'll have folks involved with traffic control while the signals are down and while that work is being done. So those are the two major road work items or traffic items that I wanted to make sure that are fairly late breaking for us. So I'll make sure everybody here had the same information I have. And that's been posted on our city Facebook page as well.
Thank you.
Sir, subject to your questions, that's all I have for administrative reports.
Does Rachel want to add anything tonight? No? Okay. Council, anything you want to add now into your comment time?
Mr. Mayor, I've got something I'd like to, is it Tom, are you still on with us? Tom Zeeser, is he still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I want to bring up something, I've talked with Tom and, Mark Timmerman, and I guess what got me going on this was, we passed where the employees get, those 2 extra holidays. And I'm thinking to myself, how nice would it be to be able to do more things online? Our inspectors, pay, and I don't know, what all we can do online permanent right now. I know we cannot get permits online. I know our inspectors are having a tough time. I mean, and the girls up front of the office too, we have the time. They're so busy that they can't call us to let us know if there's a problem with something. We usually don't find out unless we go by a specific job every day. And I know Tom and Mark have looked into some software that would give our inspectors some iPads to be able to, expedite this and make it where, through via email or something. And I just wanted to see, staff is probably a Cami thing. I don't see Cami on here, but I just want to see if we can find some funding to get this going. We are so far behind on our building standards, the way we do things. And, if we're trying to be a business friendly environment, that includes the those areas too. And I don't know if there's money set aside. And I know, Tom, me and you had talked about that. And so, and we're facing, these guys are busy. I'm busier than I've ever been. David, I'm sure you are. This area is growing. And, this is something that I think that will help us in the long term. And I just want to see if that's a staff thing or if that's something we can look into, try to figure out how to get money for it to try to fast track that.
Okay.
Council, I'll take that for action as the administrator.
Yeah, let me suggest, Eric, that you talk to Jim about your ideas and let him get the action going on it, please. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I know we ran short on Scott Neely's presentation. Just one high point that I'd like to make. I think it's a great idea what he's pitching, but that, in my opinion, doesn't go far enough. His presentation was specific about the current Cobra heads, which are mainly along our major roads, but all the decorative fixtures that are in downtown and in neighborhoods, I presume based on his presentation comment he made, aren't included. I definitely think that's something we need to look at, and maybe there's other programs, or maybe we have that ability to do. It's just not incentivized. But I would ask that as staff continues to look into this LED, if they can look into that, if they haven't already, and provide council some information on what it might take and look like to change out all custom street lights to LED as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. I noticed it in his presentation that they were excluded. So I agree. And Jim, if you and Rachel can get back with Scott and see what might be done there.
Yeah, that was my also my concern and question, I was trying to figure out, is it the entire city that fall into that category that they're addressing to change out? And then I was going to ask the question about the decorative lights.
Councilman, I believe it does count for the vast majority of the city for the HID lighting that's on the main corridors and the roads. But we do have a fair amount of decorative lighting, obviously through, downtown, through Hammond's Ferry and through a couple other neighborhoods. And so we didn't have a far-ranging discussion with Dominion Power about the costs involved with the decorative lighting. Before we went down that road, we wanted to see first if the temperature of the water, so to speak, if the council was interested in an LED lighting solution. And it sounds like you are. So we'll have the second phase of that conversation about, and I would imagine those are probably separate contracts, for going forward. But we'll have that discussion with Scott probably this week.
Jim, one thing I would ask, I don't know if you know this answer or not, but on the decorative fixtures that we have, downtown, Hammond's Ferry, those areas, who owns those? Does Dominion own them or do we own them?
I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know if Rachel or Tom has a good answer. My understanding was that there was kind of a mix, but I'll defer to somebody who actually knows what they're talking about.
That's right. It is the lights, when you say downtown, Georgia Avenue, from Jackson down to the bridge, West Avenue from Jackson down to the end, and all the streets in between, those are all city-owned fixtures. Most of the rest of them are Dominion Energy owned and maintained.
The ones that we own can be converted very easily. It could probably be done in-house. We have maintenance crews that I'm assuming, they replace those bulbs. They do have retrofit LEDs that will work in the decorative fixtures without having to replace the whole heads. We do it all the time. So that may be something we want to look into on that. That would be a cost savings versus having them do it. The bigger question I would have for him, and I was hoping we had more time, is, I haven't seen my power bill in a while with all the breakdown, but I know at one time there was a franchise fee paid to the city of North Augusta. If all of these were changed out to LED, would we get a savings on that as well as a customer? Because LED obviously pulls a lot less power than your HID ballast system. So that would be something, Jim, maybe I can get with you, this week or next week, and we can maybe call him and ask those questions.
Thank you.
We have started
Go ahead, Tom.
Sorry, we have started a retrofit of the decorative fixtures. We're starting with the lights that are in the municipal building parking lot. And yes, we are learning to do that with our own crews. It's just to give you an idea of cost, for 14 fixtures, it's costing us $5,000 to retrofit those lights. So when you figure we probably have in the order of 60 fixtures throughout downtown, sort of gives you an idea of what cost would be to retrofit those.
Now, the ones in the parking lot, those are kind of more of the Cobra head replacements, Tom?
No, the fixtures in the building parking lot are the exact same fixtures that are throughout West Avenue and Georgia Avenue. They're the post top fixtures.
I'm just curious, is it the wattage of the bulb? Or are y'all pulling the ballast out, or is this something that works with the Well, I'll get with you on it.
This is a true retrofit. You completely gut the fixture of the ballast and everything, and it's replacing it with an LED system.
We'll run some of the numbers and traps for you all, but the bottom line is, anything that's associated with the retrofits that are city owned requires an outlay of capital, and obviously in a flat budget year, we may have to take a hard look at how we space that out and when do we do it. I think we do have some good in-house capabilities that Tom has, Councilman President, to your point, and certainly worth taking a look at. But I guess our bigger problem is going to be outlaying the initial funds to get that done, whereas Dominion kind of amortizes that obviously with their project over the long term. So the thing about the LED with Dominion that we thought was attractive and wanted to bring to the council was the fact that we didn't require any initial outlay of funding, essentially, not to bite off more projects so we could chew. But I think that's what made that portion of it look attractive, at least to us as the staff. But we'll certainly take that back with Scott about kind of the decorative option as well, and see what things they have in their wheelhouse to be able to help us with. And I'll get you an answer on that the next time we get together.
Okay, thanks. Anything else? Okay, I have two items. I've really focused on service to our residents, and that's really what we're about. And it's our employees that do it. And I received an email just on Christmas Eve, as a matter of fact, from a gentleman in North Augusta, and he said he had a request of me, which he said should be granted, for all North Augusta sanitation employees to receive a special recognition for the great job they do for all of us through all kinds of weather conditions. It's truly a shame how all of us tend to take for granted their difficult but very necessary work. The necessity of their work can be vividly understood when pictures of New York City streets are viewed during a sanitation worker strike. And in closing, he said, we may not see the very difficult work that these sanitation employees do for all of us, but he wishes that the holiday season would be a time to thank them for the difficult and important job that they do for us. And I seconded that back in a reply to him, and we made sure that the appropriate supervisors in James Sutton's department knew about that. So I was grateful to receive that email. I don't get a lot of them that way, but when you do receive it for an essential service that we do take for granted, it's especially gratifying. Just want to make an announcement. I saw an email today of a CSRA community blood drive, which is scheduled for Wednesday, February 10th, from 11 a.m. in the morning to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. You can sign up online at and this flyer will be out, www.redcrossblood.org. All donations will be tested for COVID-19 antibodies, and plasma from antibody positive donations may help current coronavirus patients in need. All donors receive a $5 Amazon e-gift card via email, and donors who have already received either the Moderna or the Pfizer COVID vaccines are in fact eligible to donate. And it says also that types O, A, and B should ask about a Power Red donation, whatever that is. So I think if we can start getting the antibodies, looks like extracted from the donations, that's a positive thing. So if you can donate, I would recommend that you look into it and donate blood. That's always a valuable need in our community. I have nothing else. Do I, Sharon? If it wasn't for Sharon, I wouldn't know where I was. I appreciate the work everybody on staff does. You can see the value of it in a meeting such as this. So unless there are any further comments, this meeting is adjourned.